Imagine this. Two young women, bright sunshine, stepping onto a hiking trail. Looks completely normal, right? But hours later, just silence. What started as, a simple hike becomes one of the most baffling, most debated disappearances we've seen. We're talking about Chris Kremers and Lisanne Froon.
It's a case that just pulls you right in. You have Chris, 21, and Lisanne, 22. They just graduated university back in the Netherlands.
Right.
And they land in Boquete, Panama, April 2014. Their plan was pretty clear. They wanted to volunteer, learn Spanish, and, well, explore the area, soak in the nature.
And part of that exploring was taking on the El Pianista Trail. That was April 1st. Seems like it should have been straightforward, a walk into the cloud forest.
Yeah, definitely. They were dressed for a day, hike light clothing. They shared a backpack.
Okay.
Had a camera with them, naturally, to capture everything. And they each had their own phone, just planning a short exploration, really.
But they just never came back.
No. And the alarm bell started ringing pretty quickly. The very next day, they missed a tour they'd scheduled. So a search kicks off almost immediately. We're talking helicopters, tracking dogs, local guides, volunteers pitching in.
A big effort then.
Huge effort. But for weeks, nothing. It was like the jungle. That dense Panamanian jungle had just swallowed them, vanished.
Until months later. And this is where it shifts, doesn't it? That discovery, way off from where they started. It wasn't the news anyone wanted, but it opened up this whole chilling mystery.
Exactly. Fast forward to June. A local woman from the Ngobi indigenous community, she finds this blue backpack, not near the trail entrance, mind you, but by a riverbed, quite a distance away.
Okay, so miles away.
Miles away. And the first really strange thing is its condition. It was found, remarkably intact. Dry, even.
Dry, after months in a rainforest.
That's the thing. How? Inside, well, it contained their belongings, sunglasses, a bit of cash, their passports, an empty water bottle. Crucially, both cell phones and their Canon camera.
And the bag itself wasn't damaged. No signs of a struggle or blood.
None reported. Clean. Pristine, almost. It's one of those details that just hangs there. It doesn't quite fit.
Let's talk about those phones and the camera, because the data recovered from them.
Yeah.
That's where things get really, really disturbing. It paints this awful timeline.
It really does. Lisanne's phone, the records show the first attempt to call 112, that's the emergency number in Europe,
right,
was at 4:39 p.m. on April 1st, just a few hours after they would have started their hike. But crucially, no signal.
No signal. So they knew they were in trouble quite early on.
It seems that way. And what happens next is just heartbreaking. Over the next 10 days, the logs show 77 emergency call attempts from both phones. 77 attempts. Most just failed instantly. A few connected for maybe a second or two, then dropped.
Yeah.
Just silence again.
Imagine the desperation. Trying again and again.
And then there's another layer here. On April 6th, so 5 days after they vanished, Chris's phone gets turned on.
Okay.
But someone tries to unlock it using the wrong PIN. Repeatedly. They never get in. It stays locked.
Wait, wrong PIN? So potentially not Chris trying to use her own phone.
That's the implication, isn't it? Or perhaps Chris was injured, confused. But why wouldn't Lisanne know her PIN? Or if it was someone else entirely, who and why? After that failed attempt, the phones, well, the last time either phone was even powered on, according to the logs, was April 11th.
So many questions just from the phone data. Who tried that PNI?
It's deeply unsettling. And then you have the camera.
Right, the Canon camera. What did that show?
Well, initially it showed exactly what you'd expect. Pictures from April 1st, early in the hike. They look happy, carefree, enjoying the scenery. Typical tourist snap.
Okay, normal start.
But then there's this huge gap. Nothing between those first photos and April 8th. A whole week later.
A week? What happened on April 8th?
This is where it gets incredibly strange. The camera recorded 90 photos on April 8th, all taken in the middle of the night, between roughly 1 a.m. and 4 a.m.
90 photos. In the pitch dark, what were they of?
That's just it. They seem random, erratic even, mostly just flashes illuminating, blurry bits of jungle, rocks, branches, leaves, sometimes just the sky. Some photos were even taken with the camera held upside down.
What possible reason could there be for that? Trying to signal? Or something else?
It's hard to say. Were they trying to use the flash as a light source? Were they disoriented, scared? Some have suggested maybe trying to document something. And a couple of these photos, they're particularly disturbing.
Disturbing how?
One image seems to show, well, it looks like a twig or something with strands of reddish hair caught on it, resting on a rock.
Hair? like they're Chris's hair.
It's speculated. Another photo, when you look closely, some people think they see a shape, maybe hidden behind foliage, almost like a figure, but it's very indistinct. It's just the sheer number of photos taken in total darkness a full week after they went missing. It doesn't easily fit the lost and injured narrative. Why take 90 photos like that?
It suggests they were alive, or at least someone was with the camera a week later and doing something very odd.
Precisely. It points to some kind of sustained activity long after they initially got into trouble. But the purpose, we just don't know.
And the backpack discovery, that was just the start, wasn't it? More finds followed, their belongings, and eventually.
Yes. After the backpack, other items started turning up. Chris's denim shorts were found. And the way they were found is another strange detail, reportedly folded neatly on top of a rock near a riverbank.
Folded? That doesn't sound like something left behind in panic.
It feels deliberate, doesn't it? Very out of place. Then, weeks after that, searchers found a hiking boot. Inside was a human foot along with some sock fragments.
Oh, come.
DNA confirmed it belonged to Lisanne. And following that, more remains were discovered. Bones belonging to both Chris and Lisanne, scattered over quite a wide area along the riverbank.
Scattered? How scattered? And were they? Were the remains similar?
They were quite spread out. And no, the condition was notably different. Chris's bone fragments were described as bleached, almost white, very fragmented, suggesting significant exposure to the sun and elements. Lisanne's bones, however, reportedly still had some bits of skin and tissue attached. Less bleached, less weathered.
What does that difference imply?
Well, the forensic interpretation, or one possibility, is that this could mean Lisanne survived longer than Chris. Maybe days, maybe even a week or more longer, but it's not conclusive. Decomposition is complex, affected by so many environmental factors. Still, the stark difference is another puzzle piece.
And the scattering. Why would they be so spread out? Animals? The river?
Those are the likely explanations given. Scavenging animals, or the remains being washed downstream and dispersed by the river currents during the rainy season. But again, it adds to the feeling of fragmentation, not just of the remains, but of the whole narrative.
Was there anything else about the bones? Any indication of what actually happened?
This is where it gets even more complex and debated. There were some reports, particularly highlighted by independent journalists and forensic experts reviewing the case files later, suggesting potential marks on some bones. Some interpreted these as possible cuts, maybe made by a tool.
That's, you mean, like foul play?
That's what some theories lean towards. However, other experts, including those involved initially, argued these marks were more likely post-mortem damage from animal scavenging, or even just natural decomposition processes in that environment. There was no consensus, and ultimately, frustratingly, no definitive cause of death could be determined for either Chris or Lisanne.
So, despite finding the backpack, the phones, the camera, the remains, no clear answer on how they died.
None. Which led the Panamanian authorities to their official conclusion. A tragic accident. They likely got lost, maybe suffered a fall, succumbed to the elements in the jungle.
An accident, just got lost and perished.
That's the official finding. Plausible on the surface, given the terrain, it's rugged, easy to get disoriented.
But as you can imagine, that explanation, it just doesn't satisfy everyone, does it? There are too many loose ends, too many weird details.
Exactly. It leaves so many questions just hanging there. Why was the backpack found so far away and in such good, dry condition? Who was trying Chris's phone, PIN, days later? What on earth was the point of those 90 nighttime photos?
Right. And why is the big difference in the condition of their remains? Why were they so scattered?
Yeah.
And the folded shorts. That feels so deliberate.
All these inconsistencies, these oddities, they fuel the doubt. They make the simple, getting lost explanation feel incomplete to many people.
So what other ideas are out there? If not an accident, then what?
Well, the speculation runs the gamut. Foul play is a big one, obviously. Did they encounter someone on the trail or near it? Was there a third party involved? Some theories point to local criminal elements, others are even wilder. Then there's the idea of an accident, but maybe compounded by something else. Perhaps one was injured and the other tried to care for them, leading to the strange phone and camera activity.
Any actual suspects ever named? Anyone charged?
No, that's a crucial point. Despite intense investigation and speculation, no specific person has ever been officially named as a suspect or charged in connection with their disappearance and deaths. It remains, officially, unsolved beyond the accident ruling.
And the families, what do they think?
It's reported that the Dutch families, Chris's and Lisanne's parents, eventually accepted the official findings from the authorities. But it's also understood they still have questions, understandably. as do so many people who have followed this case over the years. There's this persistent feeling that something is missing.
It really is such a haunting story.
Yeah.
You have these two young women, full of life, plans for the future, and they go for a hike, something so many of us do, and it just turns into this complete enigma.
Yeah.
It leaves you with this deep sense of unease. You feel like the jungle, that cloud forest, is still holding on to secrets.
It absolutely does. You look at the official report, the accident theory, and then you look at the evidence of that clean backpack, those frantic unanswered calls, the bizarre nighttime photos.
Yeah.
And the details just seem to clash. They defy an easy, neat explanation. It leaves you with this nagging feeling, this persistent sense that the full story, the unseen story of what happened to Chris and Lisanne, is still out there, lost in the wilderness.